Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and we're going to talk about the brilliant new show, Y: The Last Man. Alright, so let's jump into this. So basically I want to talk today about Y: The Last Man and the question and the answer that the show is supplying. It's supplying a question and it's supplying an answer. And it's posing that question to American society. Okay, this is my opinion. Now, what's my history? I have read about a third of the Y: The Last Man comic book graphic novel, and I have watched the first 3 episodes of Y: The Last Man. And so I have and also I've been in some book discussion groups about Y: The Last Man, particularly over like 2 or 3 of the specific graphic novels. It's an incredibly deep story, and I'm gonna talk briefly about the question it's posing for American society, and then we're gonna ask the same question, and I'll give the answer for Dungeons and Dragons and why and what the question "Why the Last Man" means for Dungeons and Dragons. All right, so let's talk about Y: The Last Man and what it means for American society. So Y: The Last Man is a brilliant piece of art, and like all great pieces of art, it poses a question and it gives an answer, right? So the question is, why the last man? Well, here's the answer, right? So the story is about a world where all men except one die, okay? And it's not an accident that the name of the graphic novel is Y. It's not the word Y. It's the letter Y. That's just an artistic, it's an artistic rendering of a question, right? It is very artistic. So why? Why the last man? Why should society be reduced to one man? Well, there's a reason, right? So basically, it's saying, why are we telling this story, right? Well, there's actually the gender of man the reckoning has arrived. All right, we're there, right? A lot of things, and I think in the old days before the 2020 mass debacle, there's always this idea of this is coming, it's here. We're in the latte apocalypse now, right? Like, I can go get a latte at my local Starbucks, but I can't, the moment I get in front of any human being, I need to hide my identity. My identity will be erased. No one will see my smile. And that's after I've been vaccinated, right? Like, what was the vaccination for? So I could return to normal life? That's gone. We're in the latte apocalypse, right? We're no longer allowed. Not a single person on this planet is allowed their identity anymore. If there is ever an apocalypse, that's it. But you got to add the latte part on there. I can still get blueberry coffee at my local Wawa, right? Like, but we used to say, oh, there's this reckoning coming. It's here, right? Like, it is here, right? So let's talk about why the last man. So one of the things that's happening right now is the gender of man is swiftly disappearing, right? So already this week I've been telling you, so we now live in a knowledge worker world, right? Virtually, if a young person comes up and says, should I be a physical laborer or a knowledge worker? Who would say, go right into physical labor. Do not prepare yourself for knowledge work. There's no work. There's no future in knowledge work. But that's exactly what men are doing right now. At the macro level, men are saying, I'm going to be a physical laborer. I do not need education. I do not need to prepare myself for a knowledge worker world, right? And the reason why they're doing that is the woke future shape that we all now understand, which is a reckoning for the gender of man, right? Now, why would the gender of man have a reckoning come down upon it, right? Well, there's a lot of reasons, okay? So just to be clear, I just want to put it out there. The gender of man it's swiftly disappearing. And this is 100% applicable to Dungeons and Dragons as well, and I'll button that up as well. So men are increasingly preparing to not be able to earn well, or to be able to earn less, right? Because the idea that you're going to earn, well, I mean, it's not debatable. right now it's a known fact that if you get a college degree, generally it means $1 million more for you in your lifetime. There are no studies that show that not going to college produces more wealth for macro level, right? There's always exceptions. I don't care about exceptions. I'm talking about macro level, right? So the other thing that's happening is, there's a huge movement away from people who used to identify as man, who are either now just putting that identification down and no longer holding it up, or are saying, I reject that identification and I'm going to go and I'm going to choose my true identification. So that's part of it as well, right? The other issue is there was this concept of man that the old world held on to of, husband, provider, and everyone understands now, certainly at the macro level, everybody's like, children don't need two parents. Every spouse roles and parent roles, father and mother, are completely swappable. Anybody can do either one. And, and that's our new woke shape future, right? And we know that that's the proper shape of the world, because the institutions that study this are telling us that, and, we understand this is the correct, and across the board, institutions are telling us this, corporations are now, signing on to this new, more woke, more peaceful, more inclusive future, right? A woke and peaceful, inclusive future, right? So, with that, the gender of man really needs to disappear, right? And that's why The Last Man is showing. It's saying, so why? And it's saying, why? It's a totally good question, right? Well, here's why. Because basically, men use that gender role to subjugate women for millennia. We kept them out of power. We kept them from voting. We kept them from speaking. We kept them from doing art. All those things, right? And so that's why, okay? That is the question. So the question is, why The Last Man? Why should the gender of man disappear? That's the question that why The Last Man brilliantly asks, and its answer is because men use the gender gender role of man to subjugate women, right? And it's also saying, look at this story. In this story, there's only one man left, and the whole world is running on women, and it's just fine. Everything's great. There's less war. Resources are used the way they should. It's shared, right? That's another one. Men use the gender of the gender role of man to propagate war, to do way more violence than generally women were doing, right? And frankly, just a whole lot of ill for humanity was done under the gender role man. And so that's the answer. Why? That is, so there we have the question, and the answer is, this is why, right? This is why the gender role of man must disappear. Now, there's a counter question of, well, why do women get to stick around? Why don't we just get rid of all gender roles altogether? Because if you look, right, think about it. The future is female. I know you've seen that bumper sticker. I know you've seen that t-shirt, right? I know you've seen celebrities say it, right? And boy, is it coming true. Like, it is just 100% coming true, right? We are moving into this more woke, more inclusive, more peaceful future. It's so clear, right? Violent crime is very much receding, right? And of course, and there's a lot of things to do with that, right? Another one is cameras. Picking up criminals has become trivial, right? It's a trivial task now, right? There's no need for Sherlock when figure out a crime is just what camera was close to it, right? It's not really like sleuthing anymore, So, so why should women's gender remain as men's gender disappears? Well, here's why. Women never had a chance to really ball out in their own gender. Women never had a chance to express in their gender. That gender hasn't had its opportunity. You can't, we do understand fully in our new woke, more inclusive, more peaceful future, we do absolutely understand that gender is a construct, But men had like 6 millennia to manifest, and at least 6 millennia to manifest their gender role, right? And now you can't just, go gender as a construct and not allow the woman gender to have at least some time where it, has a good time within that gender role and has expression within that gender role. If we go directly to gender as a construct, it's all, mixed and anybody can be anything. And isn't any period where women have a time of expression for their gender. That does seem unfair. So that's another one. All right. So we've answered the question at the American society level. Let's answer it at the Dungeons and Dragons level. When the last man is playing Dungeons and Dragons, why will he know that he deserves to be surrounded by women and that no other men can be at the table? Here's why. It's what we did, right? What did men do to Dungeons and Dragons that women didn't? It's a list, and I'm going to give it to you. All right, bikini armor, right? So basically 70s, 80s, if you look at those Dungeons and Dragons books, there's a lot of bikini armor, right? So you got a fighter, he has all the gear he needs, he's fully protected. Same female fighter, right? Her, her jumblies are covered, but nothing else is covered, right? And, bare legs, bare midriff, bare shoulders, bare arms, right? It's ludicrous, right? And it's completely gendered and completely wrong. And it's completely there. There's no justification for it. We did that, men, right? Also, Lorraine Williams came in and saved the game in 1986 and literally catapulted the game into another. I would say that 1986 to 1997 was far more successful for Dungeons and Dragons than 1974 to 1986, in which Gary Gygax led the game, right? Far more commercially stable, and I think, frankly, far more profitable, right? But if you go over onto Davy Chappie's channel, you'll see a man who absolutely does a massacre hit job on the history, denying the progressive history that Dungeons and Dragons had with a female at the highest level of the company, literally CEO. And he just tears her to shreds, right? And his is the most recent and the most prominent, but there's easily 100 of these just absolutely horrific revisionist histories that tear down the accomplishments that women have had in Dungeons and Dragons. Men did that, all right? The other issue is there have been a lot of men who have made a lot of men in FLGSs, and you will find stories all over Twitter of men excluding women from games of Dungeons and Dragons at much higher rates than women have excluded men, right? And also even from FLGSs, from friendly local game shops, right? Not showing them where the stock was, selling them the essentials kit rather than all 3 books, right? Because they're like, oh, well, you're just a little lady, you'll need to, have the starter kit and not really the full, MMG, DMG, PHB. Men did that. Like, you will find just hundreds on Reddit, everywhere. You will find stories about this happening, right? Also, men chose 7 white male leads to be the design leads of Dungeons & Dragons and excluded any people of color from ever holding the role of design lead for Dungeons & Dragons. And men chose, at the macro level, men were fully responsible for making sure that every single design lead that has ever been in Dungeons & Dragons was male and was white, right? Men did that. Women didn't do that, not at the macro level, right? Now, Lorraine Williams was in the middle there, right? So she's part of it, but there are far more men that constructed that future than women, right? So that's why. And we know it now, like, the idea that why the last man will be the future of Dungeons & Dragons is absolutely true. We have a game that has 7,000 pages of canon, right? And we have a world where men are saying, I definitely do not need more education. Right? And so in a world where men are fleeing education, and we have a game that continues to increase the page count on the canon material constantly, that is a formula where there will be Y the Last Man, and it'll be the game will be 99% women and 1% men, because men won't be capable of playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. Right? So that is why the last man playing Dungeons and Dragons will know what he did. Now, him being a stand-in for the entire gender, right? So it's a brilliant, brilliant show, and I think it's a brilliant question, and the question's been asked and answered for the American Society and for Dungeons and Dragons. That's my understanding. That's my opinion. I'd love to hear your understanding and your opinion. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.